Hello, dear listeners. What a special show we have for you today. If you love fantasy, if you love romantasy, if you love worlds created in the dark and the light, galaxies far, far away invented, this is your show. On this week's episode of You Are What You Read, we are joined by V.E. Schwab, also known as Victoria, the #1 New York Times bestselling author of more than 20 books, including the acclaimed Shades universe, the Villains series, the City of Ghosts series, Gallant, the runaway TikTok hit, The Invisible Life of Addie, LaRue, The Fragile Threads of Power. These huge titles and series are in libraries from the kids to the 90-year-olds. Her latest, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, is a genre-defying novel about immortality, hunger, love, and everything in between. In this conversation, we're diving into the books that built Victoria's soul, her process, her family, her literary influences. Ladies and gentlemen, V.E. Schwab. Let's start with the fact that if you read a great novel, particularly yours, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, so imaginative and so layered and complicated and interesting and funny, that you almost feel like you know the person.
I mean, that's the hope, especially because my books are me. Like they're written for different versions of me, maybe different ages of me, but the heartbeat through the center of them is all me. And also, can I just tell you how lovely it is? I just assumed that you were going to immediately make it about Addie, and I'm so proud of that book. But I've just come back from tour, and I had an interviewer ask me point blank in Prague. She goes, given the reach of Addie LaRue and the fact you'll almost certainly never have that kind of success with a book again, how do you find the will to write new stories? And I was like, what a wild thing. So thank you for even just saying that about Bones, because I kind of feel like I live in the shadow of a book that I love and put so much of myself in, but also feel I'll never get out from behind. I'm sure you understand that feeling.
Completely. But I would just ask you to just pivot with Addie,
Yeah.
just a little bit, to shift the lens. Because when people say things like that, it's not about you and your book. It's about them
Yeah.
and their book.
Yeah.
Why do we keep doing it?
I mean, that's the thing I said. I was like, well, if I was just doing it for the sales, I would have stopped. But that's not what drives me. And also, we're lucky to have one book like that in our whole career. How lucky am I to have the one? But that's not what makes me show up to a blank piece of paper. What makes me show up is having a story to tell, and I have 1,000 more of those, and I don't really know how to not tell stories. So also I understand that, like, while one of my books might be by new numbers alone the best selling, I have
Right.
readers come up to me at an event, and every reader has a different favorite book. And I would never want to stop myself from writing something that could become a future reader's favorite book as well as mine. It just it didn't occur to me that way, but I was like, wow, thanks for saying the thing that I think about in the middle of the night.
Right. Well, that's your creepy, crawly, scary
Yeah,
thought.
exactly. My creepy
Like,
crawly thought, I'm sure. Do you
what
have
if this
one?
leaves me?
Do you have, because my one thought that repeats over and over in my head is they'll say your last book was better.
Well, now we're getting down to it.
You have one?
No.
You don't have a creepy crawly thought?
I'm my creepy crawly thoughts are, am I gonna earn my salvation?
Oh, sure, sure. Those are good creepy crawly thoughts, so
Yeah,
those are
but that's
ones that
creepy
push.
crawly. But when it comes to the business of what we do,
Yeah.
here's the only thing I can say is, if you're unhappy or if you got bad feelings, lean on the people around you who are wiser.
Yeah.
I do that every day. And also, I am the captain of my ship, and I'm gonna do it my way. I'm not gonna do it the way somebody tells me to do it,
Exactly.
and I see in you
Yeah.
someone oh my gosh, at that cocktail party, um, I said to myself, you're a rose that's about to go boom, boom, and not because you were gonna master that party, it's not that at all. It's about the way you carry yourself in the world, like a sponge picking up all the feelings in a room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if we went to other people at that party,
Uh-huh.
I mean, there were people there that weren't uncomfortable in any way.
No. No.
They were not at all, or at least appeared to be. Then I noticed a few people, like, really throwing them back,
Mhm.
and that's always a sign that that's not their jam.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's I look at those like it's the homecoming dance, and I'm serving punch.
Most writers, I mean, we were in some measure, in some capacity at some point in our lives, the underdog. Whether it was socially, whether it was existentially, whether it was romantically, like we're used to being back against the walls. And I think that it's really interesting then. I think I struggle when we get into situations where then it feels like a cafeteria. And
Yes.
I never want to go back to high school. So whenever I feel like I'm back
Neither.
in the cafeteria, I'm like, I would like to opt out. I will go eat in the library.
So how Victoria V.E. Schwab,
Yeah.
how did you how was she born?
I'm an only child with a God complex. I was raised with a sick parent, and I think what happens when you have a sick parent, my father, type 1 diabetic, he's still well, he's still alive thanks to the evolution of medicine, but I grew up at a time when he was much more fragile. And being an only child with a sick parent, you kind of think, "Oh, if I just pay enough attention, I keep this person I love alive." I can just through sheer hypervigilance, and it made me a very, very stressed out, hypervigilant observer of a child. And add to that that I was thrown into an extremely grueling all-girls preparatory school,
Uh-oh.
in Nashville, Tennessee.
Can you tell us what it was called?
Harpeth Hall. I mean, it has produced heads, CEOs, Reese Witherspoon, actresses, all-star athletes. It was a, pressure makes diamonds kind
All
of
girl.
place, all
Yeah.
girls.
Well,
And
I'm a big believer in all girl.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's one of the reasons I became a writer at 19 because I came out of a school that taught me the only person who can actually stand in your way is you. And I got to college, and I just will never forget my freshman year watching no girl raise her hand because she didn't wanna look silly in front of the boys, and that was not a thing that had ever been taught to me. And so I realized very quickly the only thing standing in my own way as a writer was myself. In fact, I hadn't written a novel until then. I'd written poetry. And I realized as a sophomore that I was just afraid of failing to write a book. And as soon as I realized that I was afraid of failing, I have this deep antagonism in me. And I thought, well, screw that. And I sat down and I wrote my first book as a sophomore, and it was really bad, but the addiction of hitting the end and being like, "Now I know I can do it. Now I can do it better." And I did it again and again and again, and so when I graduated, I was 21 turning 22, and book went out on sub, and my very first novel sold, to Disney, and I wish I could say, "And from there, everything was wonderful." And instead it was, "And from there, everything was psychological abuse."
Oh, wow.
No.
So
Yeah.
so but here's the story, though. You had the intestinal fortitude to
Yeah.
take your work and put it out there,
Yeah.
and now you're judging it as it wasn't that great, but clearly they saw great potential in it and something
For the first 5 years, it felt like all people saw was potential. They kept thinking it wasn't realized in some way. I would, my first novel came out with Disney and it didn't sell well, and so they took it out of print in less than 2 years, and then my next thing was supposed to be a trilogy, and they decided 2 books in to cancel it and basically say I wasn't trying hard enough. And so at 25, I just felt like I had failed. I had broken somehow, and so I wrote my first ever adult novel, Vicious, as kind of a little bit of a screw you to the system because it was so unsellable, but I thought if I'm going out, I'm going out on my own terms. And Tor, my adult publisher, ended up picking it up, but even then, they were like, "Oh, this is not going to sell, but we're pretty interested to see what you do next."
Interesting. Well, I hope that you have taken any manuscripts in the past that you have written and that you have them on a shelf and
Yeah.
that you begin to expand your publishing horizons.
Oh, yeah. I only have one trunked novel, and the thing about it is that I ended up about 10 years after it didn't sell, that first book, I realized that the beating heart of it was good for something else, and so I ended up writing a children's book series. So I don't believe in wasted ideas. Sometimes we learn from the act of writing, and sometimes the idea has to wait for the right context. But I've never maybe it's part of my process as well, is that by the time I sit down to write something, I know exactly what I'm writing. Like, I know it backwards and forwards, I get to
Mhm,
know it,
mhm,
but it's almost like
mhm,
I've made the investment in it. But
mhm.
yeah, so I basically started at 19 and I have been going ever since. Bury Our Bones is book 25.
This is fantastic. It's fantastic because you write for all age groups,
Mhm.
really. You write I don't even like to categorize your work, and I struggled doing it when I was preparing for this interview.
Yeah.
I don't like to lump you in a genre because I feel like the minute I do, Victoria, tomorrow you're gonna come out with something and I'm gonna go,
I
"Well, I
mean,
was
that's
wrong."
my dream, isn't it? But I'm fascinated by how we wield categorization, and I'm thinking about how the industry wields categorization because it feels like, one, it's wielded differently for men and for women. I'm fascinated by who gets to be an author and who gets to be a fantasy author or a sci-fi author or a romance author, and I'm really interested in kind of charting the difference of how big you have to get.
I don't put the books in the bookstores,
Same.
but that's where the categorizing comes
Yeah.
in because they gotta know where to put V.E. Schwab. They gotta find a spot for you.
Well,
And so I would say creates worlds.
but I'll tell you, but this was the thing. Addie LaRue was a bit of like a eye-opening experiment. It was the very first of my novels to be shelved in general fiction.
Yeah, let's talk about Addie LaRue for
Yeah,
a moment,
yeah,
okay? So you went out on a limb with that one.
sure. It was a
You said
mistake.
okay, you were like,
Yeah,
I but it's interesting to me because the moment I met you, the first thing we established is that I don't like this system.
yeah,
I don't like cocktail parties, I don't like schmoozing,
same.
I was laughing because you're such a love, and, I was I was like, "Okay, none of us like it."
No, I gravitated to you
I hate them
instantly
too.
because
Yeah.
it was so you were so genuine in your distaste for it. Everyone else was pretending to have a great time, and I feel like I saw you across the room, and I was like, "Adriana's not having a good time either." And I was like, it's like people whose faces have subtitles. I was like, "Adriana's face has a
You saw
subtitle."
the subtitle, you
I
saw the
saw it, and I
chyron over
loved
my
it
head.
because I think it is so, like, so much pressure gets put on us to perform gratitude and enjoyment in such aggressive ways that we can never have negative feelings about any of it or be seen as ungrateful.
Okay, Victoria, but I'm happy to perform, but I don't wanna perform for my
No,
peers.
that's what I mean. That's
Do
what I
you
mean.
feel that way, though?
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
still feel
you
so
do.
much pressure to perform because my thought is, "Oh, they're gonna go tell somebody else she thought she was too big for us, or she thought she was like," I went from being too small to be taken seriously by anyone to too big to be taken seriously by anyone in my own corners. And it was a really uncomfortable education when Addie came out. And it felt like Addie LaRue was my 20th novel. It was my first major departure from classic fantasy in that it was fantasy, but it was set more in a realistic setting. I love when
Right.
people tell me in the same sentence, I don't read fantasy and Addie LaRue is my favorite book. And I'm like, one of these things is a lie then, because Addie LaRue is about a deal with the devil over 300 years. It is a fantastical work, but it was shelved in general fiction. And the reception to it because of that, and the reach because of that, and the audience scale because of that was so different, and I thought, "There is nothing different about this book from everything else I've written. It is still me. It is being held to a completely different standard. It is
Mhm.
being treated in a completely different way." And it ruined me a little bit afterwards because then I returned, as I knew I would, to writing things which sat more cleanly in the fantasy genre. And it was like every door that opened just swung closed with like a massive recoil. And I've kind of spent every book since pushing that door a little bit and saying, actually, okay, if you, I'm going to make it harder to quantify my genres. I'm going to make books that straddle horror and romance, that straddle genre and literary, children and adult. I'm going to put illustrations in adult novels. I'm going to make children's books darker. Like, I'm going to, if you want to talk about the hypocrisy of how we categorize books, I'm going to make it a hypocrisy,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know?
Wow. So it's not copying ever to anyone else's idea of who you are, and what you're
No,
writing.
it's arbitrary. I will have a 90-year-old woman come up to me at an event holding one of my children's books saying, "This is the book that like helped me connect with my grandchildren and I love it." And I will have a 10-year-old boy come up to me holding Vicious, one of the darkest books I've ever written. And I'll realize that like books are like puzzles. Sometimes they have a lower age advisory, but puzzles
Mhm.
don't have an upper age limit. Why are
No.
we creating rules, especially as someone who came up through children's and YA? And people will always apologize. "Oh, I'm sorry. I know I'm not your ideal reader." I'm like, "What is that?" My ideal reader is a person who wants to read. Like, a good story is a good story regardless of where it's shelved.
And the reader's judging herself or himself,
Yeah.
which is
And
crazy.
why?
Read whatever makes you full and
Exactly. I
makes
read
you
Stephen
think.
King and I read Diana Wynne Jones, like the peak of darkness and the peak of whimsy. And like, I am the same person when I read both of them, and I am slightly changed by the time I finish both of them because that's the goal as a reader.
Now, if we go back to little Victoria
Yeah.
in the house with your dad, who's a type 1 diabetic, and your mom, what kind of a person is your mom?
An angel, Jesus, I mean, yeah, like, my mother is an adult. My mother is an adult. My father was the other child. My mother is 5 feet tall. She is English. She's an English immigrant, moved to America when she was, like, 11,
Okay.
and, just self-made, incredible, extremely intelligent, and they basically read to me every night before bed.
So let's go back to that time.
Yeah.
What Tell us the books that built your soul. What
Oh,
are the books that they
mm,
read that time and again I'm gonna throw one out.
yeah, yeah.
I Captured the Castle,
Oh, perfection. Perfection.
because I'm thinking of your mother and
Oh,
father and the
yeah.
situation
You
and
know
the
what
dad
I
in
was
that
read
one.
before bed, though? I was
Mm,
read Shel Silverstein. I was read William
the
Blake.
best.
I was read Emily Dickinson. But
Alright.
I had every Shel book because what a mature, dark, funny poetry. Like,
Mhm.
that's how I was raised. I thought in meter and cadence until I was, like, 13.
Well, you learned really poetry from him, didn't you? Shel Silverstein is first and foremost a poet, and then
Yes.
he's a dramatist. I remember seeing his plays put up, Victoria. I hope
I
they'll do
did.
them
I
again,
never
but,
got to.
oh my gosh, I bet they're gonna do them in Scotland. I bet they will, but let's
100%.
talk about Shel Silverstein for a second. He comes up a lot on this podcast.
Does he?
Let's talk about The Giving Tree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
Children's
hate
books
that book.
ever. You do.
I hate it. Of course. What kind of message? Because also, what a, like, weird gendered
Well,
message, like, because
okay, go ahead.
it's all about how women are supposed to perform though, right? We're supposed to give all of ourselves to the detriment of ourselves, right? We are supposed to, like, literally be willing to die to nurture others. Like, what? I mean, I understand that it's a story about
Mm.
self-sacrifice, but, like, from the lens of a young woman in the world, I'm always amazed at that, like, this idea that, oh, the greatest act some people can give is to destroy themselves for others, and I'm like, "But who's not asked to do that?" Right? Who's
Well, I was
invited?
just gonna say, you could go throw a rock in a crowd and hit a woman, and she'd tell you, "You're right."
Yeah.
That book actually spoke to me
Really?
very deeply because it was about age,
Yeah, it's true.
and it was about
Yeah.
don't squander the tree.
But also, here's my issue is that I'm a
Mhm.
pagan, okay? So I'm a nature obsessed person as well. And I mean, I also like if we want to talk about the other creator that I grew up with in the visual sphere that informs so much of who I am is Miyazaki, which was a
Okay.
deeply Shinto-driven Japanese creator who dealt with, like, the line between nature and man and all the ways in which humanity was destroying nature.
Mm.
But it made
Mhm.
me really fascinated by nature, and so I knew so many facts about nature growing up that I was offended for the tree. Like, a tree like that should have lived 900 years. It should have had 3 eras. It should have had a growing era, a living era, an aging era, and it was never even allowed to do that. So when we talk about, like, the tree fulfilling its purpose. I'm like, why was the tree's purpose though for the kid? Tree's purpose is for tree.
Okay, that's really interesting because I was growing up in Appalachia,
Yeah.
and a tree provides shade,
See?
fruit, heat
Yeah.
when you chop it down. There's a cycle of life to it,
Yeah, but
and
when you
that
chop down the tree, that tree doesn't regrow. It's not like picking fruit from the garden,
you're correct.
you
You are
know?
correct,
No, I
but it
love the simplicity of this interpretation for us.
yeah, we're so you see too that, and I have this theory, Victoria, about the books that we hate or love as
Yeah.
children. I bet you were a big Pippi Longstocking girl.
I was. I mean, I was a boxcar children girl, if we're gonna be
I love
real.
Boxcar Children too. The Outsiders, of
Yeah, of
course.
course.
I'm sure you love that one. Were you turned on by the Transcendentalists, by Thoreau and Emerson and that crew up there?
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been deep, like, very philosophical kid.
Mhm,
Like, I was
mhm.
probably as enamored with, like, Machiavelli as I was with Thoreau, to
Okay,
be honest,
me too, because
but
my
I
dad had those books. What
yeah.
about Walt Whitman?
I mean, yes and no. Again, I had a real jump in my education. I was not a writer and a reader, with the
Okay.
exceptions early on. I kind of jumped. I was an athlete, and so there's like 4 to 6 years where that was not like creativity was not my purview, not my prerogative. I did not grow up in libraries the way so many young writers and readers did. I grew up on a soccer field. I grew up on a fencing strip. I grew up in
That
competition.
explains that explains your dramatizing.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up
That
making
explains it.
constructions for people. I would build, like a film concept. I would make people act it out. I again, this playing God of it all, right? I think that's probably why I'm offended by the tree, because 'cause I'm, like, hierarchically had this issue as a child with justice and the idea that, like, a human life was worth more than another life in nature.
Now what do you mean by your status as a pagan?
A pagan, like, I believe in, like, the closest thing I mean, pagan is a really personal belief system, isn't it? Because it's not an organized religion, and
Yes.
so you're not, like
No.
you don't follow the
It's a
same
it's a
doctrines.
it's a philosophy.
Yeah, I believe, what closest thing would be, like, Shinto. So, the Japanese Shinto philosophy, which is everything that is awe-inspiring in nature is possessed of its own god. So, the sense so that, like, when I move through the world, I feel like it's all one big I'm gonna sound like I spend too much time on mushrooms, which is not a thing I did until I was an adult, I swear. But, like, the most incredible thing about taking mushrooms, for instance, is that it removes your hierarchic sensibility as a person, and you put yourself on the same level with everything else. And then it starts to get really weird when you think about the fact that psilocybins do the exact same thing in nature. They're all connected. And so basically by ingesting a mushroom, you start to become one mushroom among the many mushrooms. I didn't do that until I was a full grown human, but my sensibility has always been that when I am in the natural world, I feel part of it. I understand that, like, it isn't hierarchically me above the tree, above the land, above the sea. It is all possessed of energy. It is all part and parcel of the forcing of
And
itself.
equally
Yeah,
valued
it's all value.
and equally important in the
Especially, I think what it
scheme.
is, you're talking about age, right? Let's come back to the giving tree, and it was about age. This is the thing that I've always had this obsession with trees because they live so much longer than us when left to their own devices. We
Yeah,
abbreviate them, but trees have always been this incredibly
true.
comforting force to me because when you think about it, if you just leave them alone, their lifespan is like 10 times our lifespan. They exist in a different syncopation, and I've always been fascinated by the idea of like scale and syncopation. There's this, not to be like completely philosophical about this, but now there's like all of this fascinating scientific explanation about like what we could be perceiving as UFOs, right? And the idea is that there's actual unexplained phenomenon, but what it's thought to be is an issue of scale, meaning as people, we are only able to perceive one order of magnitude in either direction from ourselves. One order of magnitude larger, one order of magnitude smaller. It's why we can't perceive atoms. So we didn't know they existed until the science came along. Now, a lot of scientific belief is that what we think of as UFOs or of higher, other powers are simply existing at a scale outside of 1 degree to either way. We could be atomic particles to something else. We could be galaxies to something else. And so I think I've always just been fascinated by scale. I'm one of those people who looks up at the night sky and it makes me feel small in the best way. Like it makes me feel negligible in a comforting way. And I think trees do the same.
Isn't that interesting? Because when I look at the night sky, it fills me it fills me with a sense of possibility
Yeah.
about everything.
Yeah.
Like, opens my heart up bigger,
But some
opens up.
people panic. Some people look up at the night sky and it makes them feel so small and insignificant that they panic. And it's a terrible sensation. And I'm so interested in that because to me,
Interesting.
I'm like, "Oh, nothing matters, and that's good. Nothing is
So
gonna."
you got a little bit of nihilism in
I am a
there.
little nihilistic. I'm a little nihilistic.
That's interesting
You didn't
too.
think this was what conversation was gonna be about, but here we
Well, I
are.
knew it was gonna be exciting because it's you, and I knew it was gonna be different because it's you, and
I
that's why we're here.
I will say I
Okay,
was
so
supposed to be an astrophysicist, and
all
my
right, now we're getting down to it. When I describe you to folks and I say you just get a sense of the absolute ignition of worlds. You're in the presence of somebody who enters a portal, and it's gonna take you someplace you didn't think you were going.
I mean, that is the goal. That is my only goal as a fantasist is to like it's not even I'm not really interested these days in fantasy which takes us out of our world. That's a specific kind of escapism. I am most interested by fantasy which brings us into our world and says that magic is here with us. And it's a specific skill set that I've worked really really hard at and that I'm still working at, which is to convince the reader that magic is real. And it's not actually about convincing the reader that magic
Mhm.
is real. It's about planting a seed of doubt that magic isn't.
You just said something profound, which leads me to this. If you could, if I gave you all the powers
Yeah.
of magic to change one thing in the world, what would it be?
The perception of time.
Mm.
Because I mean, look, I could sit here and be like, world peace. It is too many factors, right? Like, I would need more than one kind of magic. I would need many, many kinds of magic. And also, I think fantasy teaches us also that there's always a hierarchy and that if you give anyone power, they're going to create striation. And so, but I'm fascinated by how we perceive and treat time. If I could also extend that power to modification of time, I would really love a pause button. I would love to be able to like gain a year to just read or just write. I think I have so much cognition about how limited my time is that it causes me to not be very good at being a human being because I feel like I need to be a human doing at all times. If I have a day where I didn't create something, where I didn't make something, where I wasn't moving forward in a pursuit, my brain tells me the day was wasted. I don't do well at just living because I think time is so limited. I must make, I must do, I must create. And it makes me not very good at being just a person.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you. I said this and I mean it. You're a person that's full of light and
Yeah.
beauty and truth, and you're prickly and you're tough.
I was gonna say I am bittersweet chocolate, Adriana. I am.
I'm gonna say you were bittersweet chocolate, but I was gonna use a different analogy. You're like
I just have a very, very dark core. I think people are always really surprised when they read what I write and then they meet me in person and they're like, "But you're so nice." And I'm like, "Because I put it on the paper." And like it's not that I think like I write a lot of darkness, but I write it from within the darkness, not from a privileged place of light. Like I write about mental health, I write about suicide, I write about things that like I have gone through myself. I write from within the darkness.
is it possible, Victoria, with your dark core and
Yeah,
your dark center as you describe it, that it too illuminates something? Okay.
absolutely. Like wouldn't want to be differently. I say that. I think I wouldn't be me differently. I think that I seem a lot lighter than I am. I've learned
Understood.
how to, like, use that.
Now let me ask this question because 'cause you're still young.
Hmm.
I know you don't think so because you've written 25 books,
I
and
don't feel young.
once you put that many miles on a car,
A
you
car
know,
is a little
let's
used up right now.
car has some needs some new wheels kinda thing, okay?
Yeah.
I'm teasing, but having said that, you have a real philosophy about life
Mm.
and about your inner soul and what you're here to do,
Yeah.
and you have a lofty sense of your own intellect,
Yeah.
which is important because you almost became an astrophysicist, but you became a novelist instead. I'm really interested to know if you're gonna keep writing books, or are you gonna maybe dramatize? Are
Oh,
you going to maybe direct a movie of your book or create a world for film, or
yeah.
maybe work with some musicians
Ugh.
and set these gorgeous stories to music?
I mean, I mean, this is the thing. I feel like the heathen author, right? I've always considered the visual medium to kind of be the great codification of story because it creates a uniform build in all of our minds. I've also been burned enough by the TV and film industry in my short time that I like to call myself a popcorn optimist, which is when I can sit in a movie theater and watch an adaptation, it's real. And until that moment, you will not hear me refer to one of my projects as becoming anything. But I do think that, yeah, that's the trick, isn't it? One is as a fantasy author, it's even harder to get anything made
Well,
because there's a
yeah.
budget.
But I
Yeah.
wanna just gently just
Okay.
rap on the door here for a
Yeah.
second for you. What's the solution
Yeah.
when you are, as an artist, negated, turned out, turned away? Take back your power.
I'm definitely learning to. I think early on, I was like, "I'll just trust everyone else to be in the
No.
same boat with me." And I think that, I'm also learning patience, which is not a thing I've ever had in my life. And I think that the adaptation industry teaches you a lot about patience because, like, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is fairly far along in development right now and could have been made several times over by now, and it would not have been good. It would have been fast, it would have been there, but it wouldn't have been good. And I am a real firm believer that I would rather something take longer and be good. So I think that I also know at the end of the day, I've watched a lot of authors lose years of their lives to the system and not written because of it, because they were so busy trying to get something translated.
Your sets and your scenes and your locations are going to have to be imagined artistically
Yeah.
and painted and entered.
I know. And that's all I want, like, I'm such a fiend for the visual medium. I'm a fiend
Mm,
for music as well, to be honest, like,
good.
nothing makes me happier than like, I'm going through this moment right now where one of my favorite artists in the entire world is creating her new album in a way that feels so synchronous. Like, we're on completely separate journeys, but we're making thematic parallels instantaneously. It's Florence and the Machine who has the darkest album of her career coming out on the 31st of October. And it is like every aesthetic element has so much been in conversation with Bones for me, with Barry R. Bones. I've spoken to her, yeah. And it was the
That's
best.
what you got to do.
I know, it was the best day of my life because, like, for me, I write books because of how songs make me feel. I will listen to a piece of music and I'll think, I want to write something that makes me feel the way this song makes me feel. Like, it's the core, it's the constructive energy heartbeat of everything that I do.
That is really beautiful. And
Yeah.
I could talk to you for the next week and a half here, and more to come from
Thank you.
V.E. Schwab, everybody. We love her.